What's up guys, Mizzo Frizzo here, and in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you a little exercise to demonstrate how class references work and how they can be passed down through inheritance. So as you can see here, I'm using the first person template, and if I fire, I'm firing the normal first person template projectiles, but if I pass over this pickup here, I'm now firing cone shaped projectiles. If I pick up this one, I'm firing cubes, and if I pick up this one, I'm firing cylinders. So once again guys, this is just a demonstration of how class references work and how they can be passed down through inheritance. It's kind of something I wish I knew when I was first starting out, so I think it could be useful for a few people. So without further ado guys, let me show you how to do this. Alrighty guys, all I've done is create a new project using the first person template, and the first thing we're going to do is just have a look at this weapon component. So if we go to the first person folder here and blueprints, you'll find this BP weapon component, and if we have a look in here, you'll see that when we press the trigger, this IA shoot, it executes this logic here, and you can see this spawn actor BP first person projectile right here. So this is a spawn actor from class node, and the class is selected right here, the BP first person projectile. The first thing I'm going to do is drag off of this class right here and promote it to a variable, and let's just call this projectile class. And this is a very nifty way, if you promote this class to a variable, of changing what is spawned from this spawn actor from class node without having multiple nodes with different classes selected. You might want to just have this one and then change this variable, based on your gameplay logic. So the first thing I'm going to do actually with this variable is just change its type, because as you can see here, the variable type is just a class reference to actor. So basically we could set any actor as the projectile right here, but this is spawning a projectile with, this is a projectile spawning logic, so we're only going to want to be able to spawn projectiles here, and also this will just give you a better sort of feel for what we're doing here. So what I'm going to do is change this variable type to, if I search for projectile, you'll find this BP first person projectile right here, and I'm going to make it a class reference to our BP first person projectile. Change variable type, and so this is a class reference to our BP first person projectile. What does that mean? That means it is a reference to this BP first person projectile here and any children of this BP first person projectile. So just to quickly demonstrate, what I'm first going to do is create a new folder here, call it projectiles. I'm going to drag this one in here. And now I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to create child blueprint class. And let's just call this one, let's just call it cube projectile. Actually, I'm going to make it projectile underscore cube. And now this one, I'm just going to quickly open this up. And I know the static mesh component here says sphere. We're going to be changing this to a different static mesh. I'm not going to bother renaming this. This just says sphere because it's inherited from this parent class here, and that's what it's called in there. So yeah, I can just very quickly demonstrate by renaming this to just static mesh and compile, and if I go back to my cube, you'll see that the static mesh component is just called static mesh now. So I'm just going to change this to a cube, and there's a couple of different cubes. One of them's really big. I think this one's fine. This is about the right size, and you'll also see this collision component right here. This is the collision component for that spherical projectile. The projectile itself doesn't have its own collision, so it's just using this basic sphere collision. I'm going to leave that the same. That's just for the purposes of this tutorial. It's not something we need to go into. I'm basically just changing the static mesh of the projectile so that we can see that it's changing when we fire it. So now I could right click on this and create another child blueprint class if I want to keep creating children, or what I can do is just duplicate this projectile cube, and because it is a child of this one, the duplicate will also be a child of that one. So I'm just going to change this one to projectile underscore cone, and I'm going to open it up, open full blueprint editor, and I'm just going to change the static mesh to a cone, like so. And it doesn't matter too much, but I'm just going to scale this up a little bit so that it fits nicely inside the collision here. It'll also be a bit easier to see if it's not so small. Nice. And then I can also duplicate this once more and call this last one projectile underscore cylinder. Open it up, change the static mesh to a cylinder. And once again, it doesn't matter too much, but just going to make this fit a little bit more nicely inside my sphere collision right here. Nice, that'll do. And if I go to class settings up here, you'll see that the parent class here is the BP first person projectile. So all of these projectiles here are children of this BP first person projectile. And this is one of the things that I really think we should be stressing to beginners, that you need to be making the most of inheritance when in your project, because it just makes everything so much easier. For example, if I wanted to add something to all of my projectiles, all I would have to do is open up my BP first person projectile right here, and let's say I wanted to add a different kind of muzzle flash to each of my projectiles. What I could do here is just add a variable and call it muzzle flash, make it a particle system, object reference, and then in each of these I could go in, and in my class defaults you will now see muzzle flash here, and I could make a different particle effect for each of my projectiles. I can just go into the class defaults and select whichever particle effect. I don't have any particle effects added to this project apart from these default ones, but you get the idea. And the other thing I wanted to show you is in our weapon component, we made this projectile class a class reference to our BP first person projectile. So now if I compile this so that I can set the default value here, you'll see that the default value selections in here have this one, which is the one we selected, and all of the children of it: cone, cube, and cylinder. So what we're going to look at now is setting this based on overlapping with actors in our world. So we're going to create a few pickups here for our projectile classes, and that's going to set what projectile our gun is going to fire. Okay, so in our blueprints folder here, we can create another folder, and let's call it pickups. And in pickups, we're going to create a base class from scratch. So we can right click and go to blueprint class, actor, call it BP underscore pickup underscore base, and open this up. And first thing I'm going to do is add a static mesh component. I'm just going to leave it called static mesh. I'm going to drag it onto the scene root so it is the root. And I am also going to add a sphere collision. And you could call this pickup radius. I'm going to select the pickup radius and change the sphere radius to 100. So it's about 2 meters wide. It's a good size. And the static mesh, I'm going to select a static mesh on the base class. just in case I want to add any sort of properties to it that I want all of the children to have. So like if I didn't select a static mesh here, I can't really turn on simulate physics, for example. I can't turn that on, but just to show you that this works, what I could do is look for cube, and one of these cubes is much bigger than the others. I'm going to select the one that sort of fits nicely in here. It's a 1 meter in size. Nice. And now that I have a static mesh in here that has collision on it, I can check simulate physics if I want. So just to demonstrate what that does, if I wanted pickups in my project and I wanted them to be objects in the world that you could push around and walk up to and pick up, I could simulate physics on my pickup item like this, and if I hit play, you'll see that that's going to fall to the ground. This cube, it's simulated physics on the root there, I think, of the cube. It's not actually, I don't know if it actually has collision. So I'm going to browse to this cube and open it up. And then if I show, that's weird. Why is the collision on the cube like that? That is really strange. What I might do is remove collision and then add a box simplified collision like so. Now that's proper. I don't know why that was like that. That's really strange. Now if I hit play, its collision works properly. So again, just to demonstrate something here, I'm going to select the sphere, my pickup radius, and I'm going to search for hidden and uncheck hidden in game. And now we can see that pickup radius because it is parented to the cube. It's going to go anywhere the cube goes. And this is now an object in the world that I can overlap with using that sphere collision and do whatever. In this particular instance, this is a pickup item. So if you wanted to have, for example, guns in your game that had simulated physics pickups, you could turn on simulate physics like so. And again, another good demonstration of this is, I haven't actually tried this before, but what if we found our pickup rifle here and opened it up and then checked the static mesh. It's got a skeletal mesh for the pickup. That's interesting. This might not have collision on it. What if we go show? Yeah, no, I guess show. Oh yeah, show collision. Yeah, so it has collision on it. I just wanted to double check that before I do. Yeah, we can't. Yeah, we can simulate physics. So if I turn simulate physics on that item, yeah, it should drop to the ground like so. So just like that, we've made the first person template a little bit cooler by having a simulated physics pickup of the rifle. So if I hit play now, that will drop to the ground, and if I walk up to it, it is a pickup. I've picked it up like so. So there you can see that at work. We're not going to be doing that in this tutorial, so I'm just going to uncheck that. Simulate physics. I can leave it on the gun. It doesn't matter if it's on the gun, but on my pickup base, I'm going to uncheck simulate physics. I just wanted to quickly demonstrate to you. That's the cylinder, the pickup sphere. Simulate physics, switched off, and now if I press play, that will no longer drop to the ground. So this is just going to be like a floating pickup that we will leave sort of on the ground. But we're not going to use the base, so I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to go back into my first person blueprints and pickups folder where we created pickup base. And there is one other thing we're going to add to this pickup base, which is a class reference to our projectiles. That's the whole point of this tutorial. but I'm not going to add it just yet because I just want to, it's just another chance to demonstrate how this inheritance works. So I'm going to add it in a moment after we create our children. So I'm going to right click on pickup base here, and I'm going to create child blueprint class, and let's call this one pickup cube. And because that one's going to be the cube, I don't have to change the static mesh. I'm going to just duplicate that one and call this one pickup cone and change the static mesh to a cone like so. And duplicate it once more. Call the last one cylinder. Oops. And change the static mesh to a cylinder. This is just because of the root of the cylinder. The pivot point is at the bottom, so it's acting a little bit differently. I wonder if any of the other cylinders in here are any different. Oh, that one's quite big. That's all right. So this one's just offset because the pivot point of that cylinder is at the bottom of it. So it's sitting sort of up like that, but that's all right. So now we've got these three children of the pickup base, and I'm just going to drag these out into the world like so. They're quite big for pickups. So, and this will be a nice little demonstration of inheritance here. So if I open up my pickup base here, and you can see my static mesh is the root. So if I scale this down, everything will be scaled down. What I can do is just lock the scale ratio here and change this to 0.5. And now when I go back out here, you'll see they've all scaled down by 0.5. So it's a very quick and easy example of how inheritance works here. If you wanted to change all of your pickups, you just change the pickup base. So if I look in one of these children here, you can see it has everything that the base has. It has the static mesh and the pickup radius, and simulate physics is unchecked and blah blah blah. We can't see any variables down here. So if I open up my pickup base here and I add a variable, and let's call it projectile class, and make it a class reference to our BP first person projectile class reference. Compile that. If I go into any of these pickups now, say the cube, the class defaults here, class defaults, will now contain projectile class right here. So any variables that are inherited from a parent, they will not come up down here in the variables right here. These are basically local variables to this actor. They will come up here in the class defaults, like so. So the projectile class for this cube is going to be my BP projectile cube, like so. I can go into my cylinder pickup and the class defaults, and I can change the projectile class to projectile cylinder, and I can go into my cone pickup and class defaults and change the projectile class to my projectile cone, like so. So now each of these pickups contains a class reference to their corresponding projectile class. Projectile cone, projectile cube, and projectile cylinder. So what we can do now is we created this in our weapon component, our projectile class. And what you can see when we pick up the rifle is you can see that so when you pick up the rifle, it creates this weapon component. And when this weapon component is created, it casts to the first person character and it sets weapon inside the first person character as self, as this one, as the weapon component. So if we go into our first person character, BP first person character, what we can do in here is get weapon. And we now have access to the weapon component. And inside of weapon, you remember we created a projectile class. So if I do set projectile class, we are now setting whatever the weapon is firing. That projectile class here is plugged into the spawn actor, the spawn projectile. So we can now set it inside our first person character as this one. Now, I'm going to create an interface to interface with these pickups to get that projectile class. This is just one way of doing it, and it just makes it a little bit easier to filter the actors that we overlap with. So I am going to, in blueprints, I'm just going to right click and create a blueprint interface, and I'm just going to call this BPI underscore interact. And inside BPI interact, I'm going to rename the function get projectile class. And with get projectile class selected, I'm going to add an output. And the output is going to be projectile class. And it's going to be a class reference to our BP first person projectile class reference. So this is just a function that's going to return the projectile class from those pickups. And again, another exercise in inheritance is if I want to be able to interact with all of my pickups, I don't have to go in and add this blueprint interface to each of my pickups. I just add it to my BP pickup base. So I can open up BP pickup base, go to class settings, and over here in interfaces, I can add my BPI interact that I've just created. And then you can see it's added this function under interfaces, get projectile class. I can go into that, and then I can just plug in my projectile class into here. And now whenever I call this function from another blueprint, it's going to return the projectile class of whatever pickup I am picking up, like so. So what I can do now is go to my first person character, and on the capsule component here, I'm going to right click and add event, add on component begin overlap, like so. And on the other actor right here, I'm just going to check does implement interface. And I'm going to select my BPI interact right here and put a branch on that. So now basically anytime I overlap with an actor, if it implements the interface BPI interact, this will ring true. And what I can do is now call my get projectile class message, and the target will be the other actor, like so. And the projectile class I can plug straight into the set projectile class of my weapon, like so. So anytime I overlap with something, if it's a pickup that implements the interface BPI interact, it will then get projectile class from said pickup and set it inside my weapon. So that should all be working now. If I hit play and go over to my very cool simulated physics pickup of my first person template rifle here, it will be firing the normal projectile. And if I overlap with this one, it is now changed to a cube. If I overlap with this one, a cone. If I overlap with this one, it's now firing cubes. And if I overlap with this one, it's now firing cylinders. One other thing I might like to add when I've got little pickups like this is once I've set the projectile class, what I might do is drag off of this other actor right here and just destroy actor. And I might add another, because I'll get an error if I overlap with one of these items and I don't have the rifle. I don't have the weapon component. So if I leave now, very predictably, I've got an error here. And a very good way to get rid of errors is to do a check to make sure that sort of thing doesn't happen. So on my condition here, I'm going to get an AND boolean. I'm going to plug in the does implement interface, and I'm also going to plug in has rifle boolean right here. So if I don't have the rifle, this will ring false and it won't do it. So just to double check that that's worked, if I grab this, it's not even going to destroy it because it's ringing false, so I won't get that error. If I pick this up, it will destroy it, and it will switch the projectile to the corresponding projectile class, like so. So as I said, guys, this is just something I sort of wish I knew early on, because this will help you to understand sort of how you pass data down through child classes, and a class reference is one of those things that just allows you to spawn an actor. So as I mentioned earlier, you know, these could be pickups for a weapon, just like this one is here. And you know, I could duplicate this pickup or make children of this pickup and change the static mesh or the skeletal mesh to display what weapon it is, and also have a class reference within those child pickups. Well, I create it in the parent and then I set it in the class defaults of the child pickups so that I'm picking up different weapons. And if you want to see how that works, if you haven't already, please do check out my How to Create a Weapon System with Simulated Physics Pickups in Unreal Engine 5. It is a doozy, and I have added quite a lot to that system since then, such as a 2-weapon system, a full ammunition inventory, fire modes with advanced sort of firing logic. There's quite a lot there, so it's a very scalable system. But yeah, so as I said, this was just a demonstration of class references and how a reference can be inherited down through the sort of inheritance in the hierarchy from the parent class down to the child classes. So if this tutorial has been of any use or value to you whatsoever, please do hit like and subscribe if you haven't already, and if you're so inclined, please do consider making a small donation to the channel via the YouTube Super Thanks function. Those donations really do go a long way to keeping me going and continuing to bring you guys quality content. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you on the next one.